I don't need it for the room, but we need it for the recording, don't we? Oh, where's she gone? Is this on? Yeah. Just wait for you. You all right? All right? Just whenever she's ready. Okay. It's just gone 6 by my clock, and we are on YouTube, James. So good evening and welcome to this Place and Resources Review Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Monday the 26th of January. Apologies for absence.
Through you, Chair, we have apologies for absence from Councillor Stansfield and also from James Smith, Corporate Director, Finance and Procurement.
Okay. Any others? No subs? Well, Nigel's not a member of the committee. Any declarations of interest? So item 3 then, Chairman's announcements. Firstly, can I thank everybody for their messages of support following the death of my father-in-law. I've passed them on to other members of the family and I've been grateful. And can I also put my thanks to Cam, who was literally dropped in at with a couple of hours to go when I got that phone call. So I had to drop all and do what's needed. So thank you, Cam, and thank you all for your forbearance. I've also been asked to announce that the briefing on flood risk and Section 19 notices will now take place on the 24th of March at 5:30. That's a Tuesday, the 24th of March at 5:30. I'm not sure what the other date was. There was an email came through about that. Was that the same email, or was that? Right. It was supposed to be this week, right? So will there be a new Teams notification come out? Great, thank you. And also for those that Andrew Grant, his funeral will be on Thursday morning, for those of who knew or are interested, in the Catholic Church in Toaster. So, minutes of the last meeting held on the 26th of November 25. They have been circulated. Is there anything on page 5 which starts with minutes and ends with the word resolved? Page 6, which starts at the minutes of the Place and Resources Overview Committee and again ends with the word resolved. And page 7 starts with regeneration and asset management and finishes on section 106 agreements paragraph. And page 8, which starts with the word resolved, paragraph 39, and that finishes paragraph 40, review and committee work programme. Or page 9, which starts Councillor Hayes was concerned, and finishes with the meeting closed at 7:58. Are there any factual corrections that members wish to make? So is it your wish that I sign these as a correct record? Agreed? Thank you. Thank you. So, item 5 then, the corporate performance report. This has been to Cabinet. It's been around everywhere. I think we can have a quick overview and then I'll probably try and take this section by section if we can.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Yeah, please. It's not that we can't hear you here, it's just that it does the recording on YouTube better for anybody that might be watching.
It's just blurring up.
Yeah. Can everybody just turn theirs on? Because mine was the same, and that it does take.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me? Hi, I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name's Simon Bryant. I'm Head of Business Intelligence, Population and Insights at West Northampton Council, lovingly known as BIPI. and it's our responsibility to provide the corporate performance report every quarter. As it's already been stated, this performance report has already been to Cabinet on the 22nd of December, and this covers the period of July to September. So this is a quarter two. So obviously in terms of reality and where we are now as an authority, and many of those people in the room will know the performance of their areas, obviously things can potentially change between then and now, so it's 4 months prior. Overall, something I just wanted to mention first of all, previously known as the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, obviously they've now merged, that came up with a series of recommendations to amendments to the corporate scorecard, which we have detailed in the attached paper. I think there's approximately like 19 potential changes and amendments. The majority of them have been amended and put into the plan. Some aren't possible due to where we are with data quality or systems and getting the information out, but the paper does specify exactly where we are, and each of those gives a status when they will be implemented if they're not currently implemented now. So please take a note of those if you wish, and thank you for the recommendations that you provided. That then helped shape and sharpen the performance report as it is now, and really try to focus us in on the areas of improvement that we need to make as an authority. Overall, I mean, Councillor, how would you like me to go through the whole report? I'm assuming that everybody has read and seen the report.
Well, let's take that as a given.
Okay.
I bar your confidence.
I'm hoping that that's the case. Overall, I'll give a very quick overview, maybe it will be very quick, and then invite any questions. Obviously, I'm the officer here. Any questions directly related
Don't
to
shoot the messenger.
I'm more than happy to be shot, but I will dodge it rather than being shot. Obviously, if there's something that I don't actually know the answer to in terms of a particular question around performance in a service area, I'll take it away and get the relevant director to come back to you as soon as possible. But overall, generally the performance is pretty stable. In quarter two, we are showing good progress across a number of areas, particularly priority areas. There are obviously a couple of particular areas where we need to still focus on and improve timescales, on completing some areas of interacting with the public. Financial pressures obviously remain there, as you will all know around that. That's obviously influences and impacts across the organisation and across performance generally. There are some really good areas as well, so affordable housing delivery, substantial quarter-on-quarter increases, some good performance there. Good performance in adult social care in terms of the reviews, the significant improvement in completion rates within the last 12 months. Weight management outcomes have improved, library usage, both physical and virtual numbers have increased, debt recovery has improved, and some areas of NCT referrals as well, in how quickly they actually responded to those have improved as well. That's just to name a few. There are more positives than negatives, I am pleased to say. There has been some demand increases across the board. You can argue whether that's good or bad, particularly obviously children protection plans. We've seen an increase in those. As well as EHCP improvements. So there's been around an additional 1,000 requests for EHCPs this time, or at the end of quarter two, compared to the same period in the year beforehand. So a significant increase in demand.
So it's not a function of the schools going back?
No, although if you look on the chart on that, you will see a big drop in August, but that's because there are no schools there. So obviously then it ramps up after that. But over the quarter or over the 2 quarters, we are seeing an increase in demand compared to the previous year's performance. And as you can imagine, they are already stretched anyway. So an additional 1,000 requests puts demands on all areas of the authority affecting performance. Customer complaints as well. We've got some rising escalations of uphold rates as well. It's indicative service pressure points, mainly in delays in communicating relating to building control and completion of inspections and issues of certificates. That's an area that's sort of coming out as a bit of a problem. And also homelessness prevention and relief as well. Outcomes have fallen further below our ambition. but significant work is underway to improve with transformation projects, and that's an area where, if we looked at that area now, we've seen significant improvements based on the Q2, which is why being 4 months, me standing here or sitting here, giving you a performance update 4 months afterwards can sometimes be a bit misleading. I was going to leave it as an overall
leave it there. So on that particular point, I know it's a gripe of mine, and I know it's a hobby horse for Jonathan as well. How can we get these reports to be much closer to the quarter end? Because we're always at least a quarter out of quarter behind.
It's generally, I think it's probably, as you might unfortunately know the answer to, because of the way that then Cabinet needs to go to Cabinet first and then the deadline.
But why? Oh, okay.
That's our cycle of reporting. So the directors need to be responsible for obviously their service areas first.
And the other question that I have on the bits about improving the narrative, I noticed certainly the one about some of them were saying we haven't got it this month, but we're getting it, or we're getting the data. On the one for average time for planning applications, and I don't think it was just for majors, it was for all planning applications. It just says we haven't got it. Is there a time then we're hoping to get it? Because I would have thought that would have been pretty easy, given that we have a date when something was submitted and we have a date when something was approved or refused, and subtracting one from the other and dividing by the total should not be that difficult.
It sounds very simplistic, doesn't it? I'll go back and find out the answer to why that's not possible. It might just have been omitted on this one. If it was, did you say it was both major and minor?
That was certainly my intention.
Okay. We'll look into that and come back to you as soon as possible.
And the same one, fly tipping, about the repeat ones, I take the point in the comment, but is there any plan to use like something like what 3 words where you can begin to get better than, it's by the gate at the end of the road? And I appreciate that's the kind of report you get. You often get another one that I get, it's on Watling Street. I think it runs the full length of the district. So
you've obviously got members of the public calling in there or emailing in there, so they're not necessarily going to be able to have a geolocation on them for instance, or a 3-word point. So take your point.
We're going to integrate that, for instance, what 3 words, into our own app, the WNC app, which is really good for reporting a flight tip, but it does fall down whenever it then tries to give you the nearest footpath, and you don't really know yourself.
No.
Rather than what 3 words, it's really good. You can see it's exactly there.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's something I can take back to the service and ask them to consider for.
Yeah, I presume there's a licensing fee and whatever for that. But I've had issues where the first time we reported they couldn't find it. Second time you give them a what 3 words location.
I found it.
And they find it, which is fair enough if it's on a road, as you say. The second gate on the left past the sheep, but the sheep have gone by the time they come back.
Yes. Understood. I'll take it back.
Right, any other questions on Jonathan? Yeah. There's one.
Do you want this one?
Yeah, I think that would be, I think that, just on the general overview, and then I'll go through them sort of by priority or colour, however we wish to do it.
It's not. It's on.
Sure.
It's on, but it's not. It's not on. Yeah, I don't know what's going on tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've obviously seen this before at Cabinet, and I don't really want to repeat all of the comments I made at Cabinet. That wouldn't seem to make sense. So I've commented as we've gone through each of the sections. These are some more broad points, really, if I may raise those. You've talked about the timeliness thing. I still think we've got to try and do something that's better, because it's so far out of date even by the time it comes to Cabinet, it's quite late. But here we are as a committee discussing these performance measures now, and it's way out of date, really. A couple of observations, though, if I might. One around the fly tips in particular. The fly tips talk specifically about removals. It doesn't talk about reported fly tips. Now, if you look at the trends on there, it does seem to suggest there is an upward trend. So again, it's commentary about sort of links to the point that he was making. Is there a way that we can really harness that data, focus in much more closely so we really can understand where these issues lie? Anecdotally, I've seen quite a lot more in my ward, certainly than I can remember in a long time. And it would be good to see those somehow captured, mapped, photographed, so we can really see if there are any trends or patterns taking place. I appreciate it's difficult in terms of the location and the pinpointing it, but I'm sure we could try and do something to be able to see what that map picture looks like. The one issue that's not on there, we've seen some stats recently come out from the waste team talking about bookings, the booking system at the HWRC's, the new system. And what that shows us is the number of slots used that are available. 89% of X slots, for instance, have been used. For me, that doesn't tell us very much. What I'm interested in is how does it compare to the system before we had a booking system. So that's not in our KPIs per se, that's a general request. Stuart's here, I think, isn't he?
But the only thing we could probably measure there would be the amount of waste collected and
it could
back,
be,
which we do have from the HWRC.
It could be, so it's a comparison to that, because presumably when we didn't have a booking system, we had no measure for number of vehicles and number of visitors. So,
but we would expect number of visitors to drop, particularly if we were targeting those that don't live in the district.
Yes. So
saying the number of visitors went down, you could argue was a success of the policy, irrespective of what you think of the policy.
Yeah, so it's really just to have a bit more visibility around that is my plea, really, if we can. It's not a KPI, I appreciate that. And then there's one other query I've got. On item 2 of the report, where there's the summary of the ideas for embellishing or adding to future reports. It refers to once an economic growth strategy is agreed. I thought we had one. And actually in that section it refers to the economic growth strategy. So I don't know why we've not got measures when I think we have a strategy already. And I think that was made some time ago, and I've not been aware that there's any plans to update it.
But that point does say there will be a refresh, a review, doesn't it? An annual review of the engagement with business is planned for March.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess my question there is, it was actually quite a detailed economic growth strategy. A lot of work had gone into it. It cost quite a lot of money, and it would be useful to understand what we've done with that if we're already in a position a year later where we're refreshing it.
Tracking against it. Yeah. Right. So if we move through the individual, sorry. Yeah.
There's 2 points. I mean, I completely take your point about Chair, about the delays in the information coming up, but there's a further point as well, which is that I don't see how this data here is feeding into and informing the Council's forward plans. And I'll bring that up particularly with one point that I was going to raise under the priority 1, which is that you've got, in some instances, you've got indicators which are going in the wrong direction. And I suspect they're in specific geographic areas. And there's no indication that that information is influencing where the council places its services, in particular youth services and family hubs. So I do wonder whether you actually think about whether, how the interface works, so that you look at the data, you see there's a problem with young people, you see there's a problem with children. Do you put your family hubs where there's a problem with the families and the young children? Do you put the youth services where there's a problem, there's issues about the young people? And I don't see that relationship anywhere. And these, even if they're late, I mean, I'm not so bothered about whether they're late. I'm bothered whether they produce any results. And I would hope that they would inform the way the council designs its services. That's one thing. The second thing is that it's not clear whether the comments that we make are actually acted on at all or taken up. And there's one particular one which is around the smoking cessation amongst women at time of delivery. And if they're not going to be taken up, then that's fine. But I think we just need to know, because I'm quite happy as a councillor to write to the commissioners or to the what's it called now, the joint board or whatever, the next iteration of the health service management, and raise this issue with them if the council's not going to do it. So it would be helpful just to have clarity about that. Thank you.
Right. Well, there's no one here from, presumably that's public health, isn't it? The smoking amongst pregnant women. I think that's your long-running concern. So if I move on to the first point.
In terms of the timeliness, is that?
No, is the data being used to inform policy?
Using it to inform direction of service delivery.
Okay, I mean, I'm happy to answer that if you wish. Obviously, that's not necessarily my place to answer that. I'm not a strategic director. Obviously, we have one in the room.
There you go. I like that. That's real.
I'm also happy to answer that as well.
That was good pass of the ball there. Stuart, you've been volunteered.
And again, obviously, speaking of my directorate, but also across the board in terms of the example you gave, in terms of looking at the statistics from geographical areas about young people and what it does mean for young people. We've got a youth strategy out that is very much being data-led in terms of the priorities, the strategy and the direction going forward. So in relation to do we use the data, I think on a micro level, absolutely. That's on a week-to-week basis. I look at temporary accommodation as an example for that. Again, when you see the new figures coming forward, you can see that the figures will have gone down, and that's because we have an understanding of where the problems are being, what the issues are, and how we need to resolve our priorities, our procedures, our focus as we've gone forward. Again, the strategy that's coming out on youth, being very much data-led, etc. There will be always instances where you could go, but that doesn't coordinate with that. So this is the second tactic. Second tactic is
Right.
Sorry, would you like to take a question?
Yeah. That's.
I will come back to that.
I think you've got the ball back. Sorry. Yeah. Just don't panic.
Oh, there we go. To the second point, where I'd like to know some more details about the specific point that you mentioned, because I'm not aware of something that you've requested at scrutiny. Right. Okay.
Okay. So if we move through to the priority one then. Now, we won't go through every one of these in detail because we just don't have the time. Is there anything... right. Sally.
Thank you. It didn't seem to be working.
Yeah, we're struggling at the moment.
Try that one, Sally.
Try this one.
Now you've lost your microphone as well as your voice. Anyways. Right, this is the one about the needs, which that sort of upward graph, sort of the upward, indicator, actually hides the fact that the figures have actually doubled from last year. Percentages have doubled. Previous period, yeah. The previous period with 3%, target's 5.5 and it's 6.6. Proportion of young people. Now, I hear what was said about the youth strategy, and that, of course, awaits to be published. I've seen it. What concerns me is that what I'm hearing is that the initial services, the test services, are going to be in Towcester. And that is also the place, of course, where the test family hubs were. Now, it's fine to provide young people in those areas and families in those areas with services. That's really important that everybody, our vision in the Labour Party of Sure Start was always of a universal service, and that would be great. However, I do think that you should target those most in need. And I would put money on the highest proportion of needs, like the highest proportion of children with acute need are not in Towcester. And I really think that if you're, it's nice to provide young people with activities, but there's also acute interventions needed early on, as early as possible, because we've all seen what comes through the Children's Trust and the portfolio holder for finance, perhaps more than anybody else, actually. And I think it's really important that those services are targeted, and I'm not convinced that looking at those figures that we're going to get it right if we put those key services in Toaster.
You need a very quick response, but I don't know that we need to get into that policy area here. This is more about what a report. I take your point, Sally, but
Well, the figures aren't going to come down, are they, just of themselves? They're not going to come down by magic. There's got to be something that gets those figures down.
okay.
Just on that, Chair, if I may, it does mention in the report that because it's the first month of the academic year, there are lots of people that are unknown. Their whereabouts is actually unknown. And then throughout the continuing months after that, it does come down a little bit because we find out where those people actually are. The vast increase in that is because of people that are currently unknown.
Is that the same for the NEET one as well that seemed to have spiked?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Can I just say that that's actually why you need to put the youth services in the right place, so that you find those kids early and you do the interventions, and the same with the family hubs as well.
Okay. Do you want to make a quick comment on that, Stuart, or are you?
Yeah, again, it's I suppose this is place and resources scrutiny, but perhaps that's something we could mention within the triangulation meeting to pick up on. Again, it's trying to pick up on the right areas where we can deep dive into this area, and because we don't have children's reps here or people to talk about the youth strategy, it probably needs to be through that triangulation.
I agree.
Yeah, thank you.
I make a request then that if those triangulation meetings are looking at it, that they look at where these which wards these young people are in, and then where the services are put. Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, James, did you want to come in?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to add to this as well, the Children Education Housing Scrutiny Committee is doing some pre-decision work at the moment on the development of the new youth offer strategy.
Okay. Right. So we'll move on to, well, still priority one and the green one. Any comments that anybody was to make in that green section? And then we got priority 2's in green. Priority 3, the green, thriving towns and neighbourhoods. The fly tips were already mentioned at, we mention them all the time, and they were mentioned at Cabinet, but I think Jonathan's point is maybe a valid one. The 6,000, I've not seen a figure that began with a 6, but is that just because we got through a backlog, or is that because there was more of them? And I think maybe a bit of both, I don't know. Certainly there was a mention of fly tip performance clearing, particularly in Northampton, had improved quite dramatically over the last number of weeks when I was at the waste management thing on Friday night. So it could well just be the beginning of that. I don't know. So moving on to towns and neighbourhoods, library visitors, better quality homes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Item 4. I mean, new council homes built 0, target 3. The target, you could say, is quite modest. And then it's affordable houses, which of course is shown upwards. But if we've got an increase in homelessness, then that often relates to the new council housing, because we might be doing well on affordable homes comparatively, but affordable homes is a movable feast, as you know, and for people who are on challenged by income, is social housing, which is absolutely critical. And that's where we need to know not just how many are being produced now, but what the pipeline is. Because in addition to the homelessness, there's the issue of overcrowding, which isn't measured, and which is extremely problematic because the statutory standards were drawn up in 1935 and are so disastrously inadequate. So I would ask what's in the pipeline in the way of council housing, and if these figures can be looked at more carefully, particularly in relation to what affordable housing means.
Well,
I would...
I was just going to ask that affordable housing box, I take it that's mostly 106 housing that's coming forward as part of bigger developments from developers? And is that a wrap-up of both affordable rent, social rent, shared ownership in the affordable box, the 204?
No,
I suspect that will be a mix of all sorts of tenures. Whereas the zero box is social rent that we have built, and most of that tailed off because of the issues were well trodden on MPH.
So exactly right. The council is MPH only. The affordable is RSL plus what developers have produced on site, etc., covering the mix that you identified. I think I was of the opinion that we had shared that pipeline, that we'd sat down with you, Sally, and walked that through. Again, I think the challenge is making sure that we set the target, that we set it against the pipeline, which we haven't done yet, but that would give you an accurate figure of how we're doing against the existing plan. And that's maybe something we could take away and look at as we go forward.
Chair, I think the point remains that the affordable housing has got a particular definition, and it's not the same as purely social housing, obviously, and it's obviously not the same as council housing. The council housing is a kind of absolute bedrock of what you really need to be able to start to make real inroads into homelessness, because people don't normally dramatically go for homelessness to being able to go into a property worth about £300,000-400,000. That's just not what people can do, and I think there's real care needed there. Now, it's not possible to measure overcrowding, which is the other side of more and better quality homes, and measuring housing need. But I do think that these need to be looked very carefully in the context of the increase in homelessness.
Okay. Moving on from that one, I'm not going to say anything on planning performance unless anybody else wants to. So moving into the blue ones on priority 5, best place to grow up.
Chair, this comes back, if I may.
Yeah, cry on.
To the issue about where the children in most need are. There's a whole lot of measures here to look at, which would sort of indicate that whilst on the whole some of the areas are doing quite well, but there are concentrations of need, and that there need to be some thinking about what kind of policies and services will impact on those areas of acute need. For example, there's about 10% of children who, I think if I'm looking at it right, who miss out on some of the basic health checks, and there's a certain percentage who are electively home educated. Some will be completely voluntary, some not. There's an uptick in the MASH figures. And it is, I suspect that those are in the areas which don't have family hubs, and family hubs are one of the great interventions which should be turning around some of the figures for children in greatest need. One of the other things, and it might be that the council, because it would be very easy to measure this, is that one of the factors which contributes to poor child health, in particular in an area where we know there's a problem with respiratory diseases, which is in Castle Ward, is the impact of mould and damp in housing. And we also know that a lot of mould and damp in those homes. There's a WAB's law which has just come in, which has just become effective at the back end of last year, and the council has got a special unit to look at implementing that and tackling cases of mould and damp. And it might be really helpful to have an indicator that looks specifically at that, because it might help to tease out some issues around poor child health and respiratory infections in those very difficult areas. There's a lot of issues, obviously, in relation to send children. I think because we're still waiting for central government to come out with its new proposals, it's quite hard to actually measure that until we know where everybody stands, isn't it?
Well, I think we have issues with SEND as
Yeah,
practically everybody who
course.
has that has
Yeah.
similar, but we all, as you say, await government's review. Whenever that comes forward, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. So can we just keep on this blue area? Is there anything else that anybody else wishes to mention? Frizana, feel free to come up to the table, Frizana. Dan, is your microphone working? Yeah, can you pass it to Frizana, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There we are. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to pick up on priority 5 and just to recognise that there have been some improvements made in respect of MASH and the timeliness of referral decisions, and there's also some good work with schools and assessment timelines. But I do want to pick up the SEND issues. And whilst there have been some improvements in the rates of EHCPs being reviewed within a 12-month period, completion of EHCPs within a 20-week period remains woefully low compared to national averages. Now, I recognise that the data is possibly slightly outdated, and I'm hoping that that picture has improved, and I don't know whether you're able to comment on that at all. But it is one of the big issues that is raised by parents that I've come across, many of them, about their frustrations. And I recognise that there is a national change and development happening in the area of SEND, but we nevertheless need to be thinking about the children as they are now and having their needs fully met. So I just wonder whether there've been some improvements since this last data was published. I'm also a bit concerned about the imminent SEND inspection and what this data will highlight in terms of those possible inspection outcomes. The other area that I just want to pick up on, and perhaps you're able to respond to that, electively home-educated children in West Northamptonshire is growing each year, and it's higher than the national average. So I just want to know whether we have analysed what percentage of electively home-educated children also have SEND. Is there a correlation? Are some parents with children with SEND simply educating their children at home due to dissatisfaction with SEND support being available through the local authority and in schools? So I just wonder whether there's any up-to-date information that can be shared, because this remains one of the biggest issues for us in West Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Sorry, Simon, can you cast any light? Is there a correlation? We need to be very careful about correlation, causation, but nonetheless.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I wouldn't be able to comment on that at this time. How it's something we can speak to Melanie around. We obviously support that team, and they're obviously looking at that information themselves. So it may be something we can go back to the director on and come back with some further information.
Okay,
for
thank you.
time.
And on the EHCPs, I agree with you, but it does look like, well, 1.8 to 2.6. Percentage-wise, that's a phenomenal improvement, but it's still pretty awful, or a pretty awful performance. But I know that a lot of these things are not always the council's fault. There's a lot of pressure in that whole system. So,
Compared to 50% nationally.
well, I don't know what the number is nationally. Okay, fine. And that's, that's another long-standing gripe I have, is we don't know what good looks like. So, right. So we'll.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, I haven't had a response. I do want to know with the issue, I'm very aware that quite a number of these measures call for early intervention with children and families. The only Northampton Family Hub, which isn't yet there, is in the library, which is not best located to deal with the most hard-to-reach communities. And perhaps at the triangulation meeting, they could talk really seriously about how, because you know, you have First Family Hub in Toaster providing a sensory room for families, which is great. But then you've got these statistics which show that there are acute areas of need, and we need to make sure we know where those children are and what interventions we're making that are going to turn, that are going to really impact on their lives moving forward.
Okay. Sorry, James.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think an aspect of this that perhaps the triangulation group may particularly want to pick up is the situation that you have where this committee is looking at a performance report and is seeking to get into the detail of some very service-specific topics. It's frustrating for the members here. And there's perhaps a question there more generally about scrutiny of performance to enable those members doing it to have the right people in front of them to answer service-specific questions.
Yeah. Thank you, James. I was just going to say something similar, that we're here to look at the performance, not necessarily the policy or whether we got the right or the wrong policy, but just the performance and the trends in that. So if we move on from that, sorry, Dave, did you want to say something? You look like a man that was going to give us the benefit of your wisdom there.
Chair, you won't get the performance turning around unless you get the right interventions. The policies are fine. It's where you do them. It's the interventions.
You've made your point. So moving on to the red areas, is there anything there that priority 7 and efficient and enabling council?
Sorry, aren't we doing the priority 6, so residential care?
Yeah.
You've got something about numbers of people going to residential care. I just wondered how many of those are self-funders who are impacted by the current 55% increase in charges.
I don't know. Have we got data on that, Simon?
That information will be available within adult social care and through Mel. I'm sure we can talk to you about that.
Okay. And the 55% increase is coming from?
It's happened.
And the drivers for it?
It's happened.
Increase in the minimum wage, NICS, what the drivers for it?
Well, if you have a look at the decision that's been made by the council and the notices that have gone out to the people who are paying, that's what the increase is. I'll provide you with the information afterwards. Okay.
I did notice with something in the budget saying that, it was part of the review on adult social care that the number of self-funders was dropping overall.
And the one other thing was the smoking quitting rates amongst women at time of delivery. Perhaps I could liaise with the officer afterwards and just see what's, so I can follow up.
Stuart.
Yeah, I'm just again, this went to Cabinet 4 weeks ago, and we're more than happy, or whenever it went, was it 4 weeks? 22nd of December. So again, if there are any questions once it's been at Cabinet, and again, there's opportunities to ask these questions at Cabinet where you do have the relevant directors available. I think it's just the scrutiny doesn't necessarily invite these directors. So it's about, again, more than happy to take any questions away, more than happy once the report comes out that you submit those questions or queries to them, and again through the triangulation meeting, more than happy to make sure we get them onto the right scrutiny for the right conversations with the right people there, I think is the key, Sally. So thank you.
Chair, if I could just, I absolutely take the point this has been at Cabinet. However, at Cabinet we get, is it 2 or 3 minutes to ask everything? So, you tend to just pick out 1 or 2 things there, whereas this is a chance to actually scrutinise. So, but it might be helpful, Chair, if we perhaps indicated in advance the areas that we were interested in. Would that help ahead of these meetings?
Or it goes to the, I think as councillors turn up to, it's the right scrutiny with the right members.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the point rather than placing resources.
Yeah, because a lot of those things will be dealt with by the other 2 scrutiny groups, particularly the family young person one.
And it could be
James?
we're duplicating
exactly.
by having these two discussions, if that's okay, Chair.
Just make a point about that, though. Do those other scrutiny committees, James will know better than any of us, actually look at the KPI data in the same way that we do?
No.
So that's the point, really, I think that Sally's making, is
I
that,
thought this went to all three.
well, it may do, but if they're not looking at the data,
Well,
then that's not going to help inform.
Does it not go to all three committees?
So the corporate performance report doesn't feature as an agenda item for the other two committees in the same way as it does on this. Of course, you could make the point that the corporate performance report is presented to Cabinet, so it's available to any and all scrutiny members who wish to look at it.
All right. Yeah, I thought it went to all three and they picked out the bits that were relevant to them. You know, their areas that they were
And-
looking at.
Sorry, through your child, I'd also think that the other two scrutiny committees are looking at issues relating to service provision that probably have a bearing on, or should hopefully have a bearing on, corporate performance and the data that's appearing in the corporate report. So they may be doing what's sought, just not in the way that you're suggesting, which is to have the corporate performance report as an agenda item. And of course, you've already touched on the current challenge with that, which is how timely the information is by the time it gets to scrutiny. So there certainly seems to be an issue here about how performance scrutiny is done across the three scrutiny committees. That could
Yeah,
certainly
well,
be
let's
something.
bring that up at the triangulation committee. I'm just conscious that we spent about 40 minutes on this, and we do need to move on to the other to other issues. So, is there anything else anyone else wants to say on the on this performance report?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's one further one, which is in staff, agency staff. The spend seems to have gone up, whereas I thought this administration was committed to bringing it down. Now, I thought that the number of agency staff had actually come down. So I wonder if we could just know about why this has happened.
Well,
Again, that would be a corporate HR challenge who monitor this. I can certainly tell you from a place perspective, we've not seen those increases.
well, can we just get a written answer from whomever on that particular point? Because I don't think there's anybody in the room can answer that.
Yeah.
And it's probably, I'm going to guess, needs a multi-area look, because it might. I don't know that, but my bet will be it'll be in one area up and one area down and whatever. But, okay, well, if we can get that. So I do want to move on. I'm just conscious that we're running out of time. Pardon? So is there anything else that you want to say on the
No, that's it.
on the report? Thank you. So we move on to item 6, which is the communications plan and strategy for the local plan. So whilst Alan and Craig are getting ready. So have we formally launched the consultation yet?
Starts on Thursday this week.
Third, okay. And it runs until?
It's Friday 27th of March, so just over 8 weeks.
Right.
Is it only worth it when it's turned off?
I don't know. Alan, Craig?
Thank you. I'll just, Chair, give a brief overview of where we are with the communications plan for the local plan. As we just said, consultation commences 29th of January, runs to 27th of March, so 8 weeks and a day. The communications plan attached to the committee report identifies a consultation and engagement approach and activities to be undertaken to engage a broad demographic audience in the plan-making process. It builds on work previously undertaken through previous consultations and indeed since our last consultation on the local plan in April to June 2024. Communications plan sets out its key aims. There are 5 of these: to inform stakeholders of the updated proposals in the local plan, including key changes since 2024, explain the purpose and benefits of the local plan in helping to shape housing, protecting local environment, employment opportunities and community development. Intention to create a strong call to action showing how planning decisions impact upon local communities and setting out that this is the moment to shape decisions and the implications of planning applications later down the line, and the principle of development being established now. Trying to make complex planning information accessible to non-specialist groups and encourage engagement for all groups, including seldom heard. The communications plan sets out some key messages it's trying to achieve. And they are again similar. Local plans shaping the future of West Northamptonshire. Housing and employment needs have grown significantly. Feedback matters at this time, and this is the point to influence decisions of growth over the next 15 years. Where planning for sustainable growth is a key message, and inclusive engagement again. So the content of the plan has been developed by the Council's planning and communications teams and sets out a variety of activities using a variety of different media. This approach has been shaped by past experience, best practice, previous member engagement and lessons learnt. Also looking at the equalities and anti-poverty screening of the draft local plan and taking on board the observations made in that document. Plan breaks down communication by key stakeholder, looking at residents, elected members, town and parish councils, rural communities, those with limited online access, and businesses. And seldom heard are elements of this group, which we will look at. Previous looked at seldom heard in terms of the use of the council's networks and contacts to promote the plan, which has included attendance at various meetings and forums of the council. This includes Youth Forum, LGBTQIA+ Forum, Disabled Persons Forum, and Diverse Communities Forum. We are looking to explore those again. There's a slightly different landscape internally in relation to those at the minute, I understand. We've got a session with the Youth Forum booked in a few weeks' time, and we are reaching out to members of those other forums as we speak to get some greater activity in there. Part of the consultation plan sets out road shows across the district, exhibitions, drop-in sessions. 2 updates to that, Chair, in terms of, I think there's 2 TBC in the actual comms plan. We've had a venue and timing detailed for Daventry, and that's now the 12th of February, 3 till 6:30 in the evening at the Mercure Hotel. And 11th of March, 12:30 to 6 in Brackley Town Hall. So 2 additional venues there for our exhibitions. The comms plan concludes just with a timeline of the activities undertaken, be that the launch this week, social media, our physical attendance at meetings, press releases, etc., and sets out in a chronological order where we are going with that consultation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So are there any comments on this comms plan? Can I just say we're going to be discussing the comms plan. If there's 1,000 houses targeted for your ward in the local plan, this is not the place to bring it up right now, but we're only looking at the comms.
Yeah,
Sally.
I want to absolutely speak about the comms. And, you know, I appreciate your presenting it. I'm not trying to shoot the messenger, I assure you. But I really think that this needs a huge amount of extra work and thought, because it's a comms plan to try to reach the broad demographic across West Northants and to reach the different communities. It really isn't adequate. You're spending more time consulting people in Middleton Cheney, all due respect to them, than you are in Northampton. And Northampton actually has got, it must be at least half the population in the council area. You put 2 extra consultation meetings in one in Daventry, one in Toaster, and we're still left with one in Northampton in the Grosvenor Centre, which I have to say has a very particular place in Northampton. It attracts people from outside, or it should still do, but it is certainly not going to get you the kind of engagement you need with the hard-to-reach communities. Now, you know, we can't talk about the detail of the plan because obviously that's not for here, but it remains a fact that that plan includes very substantial changes to Northampton. The bulk of the housing will come in the centre. There's a huge impact here, and it will fall on a particular community. That isn't represented there because it doesn't, you won't get that community through the shopping centre. If you want to look, I mean, it's fine to engage with young people, that's excellent, but in Dallington Spencer, my ward, 29% by 2021 census returns is ethnic minority. Castle is 35%, Talavera 26%, Blackthorn and Rectory Farm 23%, and Abington and Fitzfield 21%. So I have to ask, I see no strategy and no meetings there that will engage with those communities. We held a small meeting in Castle Ward to consult the community about some of the draft proposals previously. And people had very strong views, including about issues around faith communities and what happens to the centre. And if there's going to be, you know, the villagers, I've no doubt will all be wanting to talk about the impact of the development on them and the changes. And they've got lots of opportunities to input. In Northampton, there is there's no mechanism here to engage with those communities who will see massive change in their areas and to get their views on it. And they have got strong views, but you do have to reach out and get them. So I have to say to the women as well. And there's no specific mechanism here to engage with the women. There's no mechanism I can see that will properly engage with the faith communities who want to see faith buildings and have particular views about how their areas should be developed. So I do think that this needs to, you know, if we've got half the population in Northampton, we should have an equal number of opportunities to engage as the rest of the council area. And we also need to make sure that if we're going to get all demographics, and the officer referred to that, then we have got to have a strategy which includes engagement with those communities and consults with them, and also consults with the women as well, so that we get everybody's views. So I would urge that this go, and just bear in mind, it might be a plan that lasts for 15 years. The buildings will last for much longer. Once you put the buildings up, they will probably be there for about 50 years or so. So people will live with the consequences of this plan for a very long time to come. So I would urge a much, much more careful and targeted and nuanced engagement with enough opportunities for people in Northampton who've seen had a lot of really unfortunate development and regeneration imposed on them over the years, one could say even over the centuries. And it's really important that this one is got right.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask a similar question, was where we putting these roadshows where the housing is planned to go? And I did pick up at the point that, yeah, 2 hours in Northampton in person did seem a little late. So I don't know when you said we'd learned lessons from previous ones, what were those lessons and how have they changed? Because my concern with the local plan is that we put a press release out that says council is consulting on its Regulation 18 local plan, and it would dry as dust, and they don't realise that it's actually a place shaping thing, and as you say, Sally, shapes it for 50, 100 years. And then it's only when a digger turns up, probably 8 years later, and they say, oh, you said you could build over there, and then you're into not can you, but what, as opposed to if. So that, to my mind, is a lesson that we never learn, and there are many. So can you tell me in this new plan how those things have been picked up?
the content of the press release, I think, it goes into a bit more detail, and we try and emphasise that point. Councillor Manning is doing some videos where he's on some of the socials saying this is the opportunity. It is not the principle is being considered now. It's not in 10 years' time when an application comes in objecting to the principle at that point. This is the kind of time that matters. We're trying to get that message across.
Yeah, but see, even that way you're displaying it, Alan, I appreciate that's the world you live in. They don't care about the principle of development, or they, it's, we want to, I think we need to use plain English. We want to put 50 houses in that field kind of stuff, not the principle of development is going to be established.
No, I get that. That's why we're working with the comms team to craft the language I use into language that's appropriate for our residents across the district.
If I can, it's been a central point of all of the discussions we've had with the team about making sure that people understand that this is their only opportunity really to affect whether something happens, not what happens in those areas, but whether something happens. And obviously later on, it will be too late, once you've got planning applications coming in, to say that you don't want development in those areas. You'll only be able to affect the shape of that development. So we have laboured that point with the team as we've gone through. So that will be throughout the communications. It'll be very clear.
So have we mapped then the major sites that are being targeted to where these roadshows are going to be?
Yes, the market towns, obviously growth at Brackley, Toaster, Daventry, there are venues there. There's an exhibition in Long Buckby, we're proposing some growth there as well. To the north of Northampton, growth is proposed, and we've got the roadshow Moulton, and again to the southeast, Wootton is showing some growth in the plan with Grange Park, so we're going to Wootton Community Centre for an afternoon and an evening. And the Grosvenor, as we said.
Are we then also planning on, I don't know, leafleting those areas the few days before, so you don't end up with, two people, a dog and a duck, which might be what you prefer, so you're not going to have anybody shouting at you, but nonetheless, are we trying to do anything to stir up apathy?
We are. We're not leafleting every property in the district. We are going through our recognised channels, and also parish council sending posters out to them, asking them to help with engagement through their routes, but not a specific leaflet to every property in the district.
Sally.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's great that Brackley and Long Buckby all get meetings and so on, and they have a chance to input, but Northampton, it's got the biggest concentration of population. Moulton actually isn't in Northampton, and quite a lot of the development up around there has already happened. It's quite close to where I live, and when at the end of our road all the housing started, we weren't actually consulted at all. So whatever you did about consultation, it certainly didn't reach me as a member of the public. But the other thing is that you really have to look about how you're doing the consultation. And I appreciate, Chair, that that if they're working with what they've got, then the track record might not be wonderful. But for example, right next to where you're proposing to build 3,000 new developments, you've got a mosque which has got hundreds of people going in there all the time, which is phenomenally well networked, where you've got a key member of it is a councillor here. You could easy peasy get in and make sure that you consult with those communities that are going to be the most closely affected, because that clearance, that new development there, will have a dramatic impact on a community, which actually brings real life and vibrancy to our town. It's a huge asset for our town, and which risks being badly impacted. And if we just want an example of what goes wrong, Councillor Manning should know, because this affects his ward, it's Talavera. That new housing there, the Newtown Commission eventually admitted that they'd built the new town on the wrong side of Northampton, and they'd planted too many and the wrong type of trees. Well, maybe if there'd been a proper consultation, that could have been sussed out a bit earlier on, because we're now living with the consequences of that. So it is really important that there's consultation which engages with the community. It's not just a tick box exercise of going through councillors' inboxes who've already got lots of other things to think about and all overwhelmed by emails, but that it gets to those community groups like the ones in Spring Boroughs, the mosques and the other faith communities that have got that will really contribute to this. And you need meetings like in the Mounts and Spring Boroughs and Abington Spencer, where people are passionate about development, and Abington and Phipsville rather, and Darlington Spencer, where there's huge issues, and communities, again, where we've got one councillor who's phenomenally well networked into the community in Darlington Spencer and can very, very easily reach people who nobody else would be able to reach.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I agree to some extent with Sally's comments, but the point I think we need to focus on, and actually all need to take responsibility for, is that it isn't just these guys' jobs, I don't think, to engage with the public. You know, Northampton, I understand the arguments about argument, and it definitely does look a bit light on the timetable in terms of the amount of time spent. I would agree with that point. But we do have quite a high representation of councillors in Northampton, and we have, in some instances, single-member wards in other parts of the area where there's less representation and much bigger geographies to cover. So I think my message is, this is our responsibility. I don't see it just as these guys. That's fine, but my point is that I think we have to take some ownership for this as well, and it's up to us to engage with communities and not just rely on officers to be able to do that. That's the point I'm trying to make. You know, Northampton has got the largest town council in the country as well. What are we doing to ensure that we engage with them? Because they need to take responsibility and ownership as much as the parish councils do. So for me, it's about ensuring that all of those different groups are equipped well. And I noticed there's some comment in there about graphics packages and so on and so forth. We really need all the tools at our disposal as councillors to be able to use our channels and our connections, which we've all got to a greater or lesser extent, to reach out to those individuals. So you know, let's also take some of that responsibility on our shoulders, is my view. There's no mention in the plan of any radio advertising or anything of that nature. Again, I don't know how much reach NLive has, probably not, it's not huge probably, but you know, we should, I think, be trying to consider those sorts of channels as well, not just social media. You know, I know we can't advertise on the BBC, but we could certainly have some discussions on the BBC, I would hope, potentially. Local radio has got quite a reach, and a lot of people tune into that who don't use social media channels. So I think we should be trying to think creatively about how we do that. I think the other challenge is, one obstacle that I think always exists with any form of consultation is we have these great big bulky surveys. And although there is always an email link on there, I think we should be encouraging people to email just their comments. If they don't want to fill in a great big survey, they should be able to say, I really don't like this, and that's it, send, done. So I think we've got to make that point loud and clear, that you don't have to do the great big survey. You can email in a comment, even if it's one line that you reject or you disagree to.
The dear council, please take your plan and stick it in the bin. Might make you feel good, but it doesn't actually help you then.
Not at all. I was thinking
part of it you're not too happy with.
More constructive comments than that, I was thinking, Chair. One conversation that we've had in my group is whether or not, and I think this happened at the spatial consultation we did a few years ago, there were some mobile exhibition boards produced for councillors to be able to use to chuck in the boots of their car and take off to parish councils and parish council meetings. I think, again, that should be something, it's not overly costly. I think it's something we could potentially look at doing, particularly in those areas where there are allocations or quite high targets to focus on. The other point is, I don't know whether you have any engagement targets or expectations. I know that the budget one is doing quite well, I gather. I think, again, we should be trying to think about what does that look like? Can we set some targets? And if we're not achieving those targets, what do we do to keep pushing to get more of them? And the only other point is, we recently had a question time format on the budget. I'm not going to sit here and say I thought it was amazing. I'll be honest, I have got feedback and I will share that at the appropriate moment. But this is a big deal. This is not a budget for a year. This is a plan for a long period of time. We don't have any of those on here, so there's no live interactions at all. And I really think we should be considering some live interactions, and please let's make them live so that you can actually engage with the whites of the ideal people there. You can see who's asking questions. Let's not filter it. Let's actually engage with communities. And if they're tough, they're tough. You know, my view is I think that's something that's missing from the plan.
Thanks. Dan, and then Cam, and then Stuart.
Yep, thank you. It's only a couple of quick points. Notice on the consultation times, the in-person consultations, some of them only run until 4:30, 5 o'clock. Lots of people are working. I know you've got some later ones, but we've got to go later on into the evening. Here already we're seeing comments coming through saying, who are we trying to get here because everyone's at work? So we look like we're hiding from those, which I don't think we are, but it's just, you know, let's give the right impression to start with. And the other thing was, pick up on Jonathan around parish councils, town councils. Some of those ones are heavily affected, and we've got lots of councillors across those areas that are particularly affected, that know the area very well and will have strong comments. And I would really suggest that we did a individual parish council rather than saying there's this is in Longbutby or Northampton or whatever it is. We're going to have this is a Northampton Town Council consultation event, because you'll also get people come to the parish council meeting at the same time as opposed to just the consultation.
Yeah, and I think as well on that point in parish councils, not all of them meet every month, so some of them meet bi-monthly as well. So even on your 8-week consultation, by the time they get it and get it on their official agenda and all the rest of it, personally I would extend it for another 4 weeks, but that's my point. Stuart, Cam is fine. Do you want to say something?
Jonathan picked up the key points I was going to make in terms of councillors. We've got 4 groups, a number of independents, etc. So again, I'd just ask you to make sure that you get that buy-in from your members, that emails don't just land and are missed because of they're waiting for them to come, because as you have said, apathy around this stage of the planning process is significant. There's lots of different techniques being tried right the way across the country, and we will still be disappointed with the result because of that general. People don't get it until there is a digger in the field sort of side of things. So anything we can do to raise that. In terms of some of the suggestions, brilliant. I will take those back with the gang. There's lots more we can do, and that's the whole point of this conversation. In terms of live, we are doing lots of live events, Jonathan, and
it's the online.
Sorry, we're doing lots. Because of the size and the scale of the plan and the detail that is in it across all of the different, I mean, just to run through how many houses are in each of the individual settlements would take a long time. So I think we'd either have to do that by breaking it down into smaller areas, but again, we'll take that away and we will have a look at that and how we can get there. Because, and again, I agree with Dan's points in terms of we've got to get the timing right. If we're going to do it, we've got to do it well. We've got to give people every opportunity to do that. So again, we can look at timings there as well. But yeah, just some general comments, Chair.
So to wrap this discussion up then, I think what we're saying is we want a greater in-person consultation activity in and around Northampton, because that does look light. We also want a PR strategy, with radio interviews and that sort of stuff to try and raise awareness, and a way of targeting, making sure that, the hard-to-reach communities, but not just that. I'm thinking, the faith groups you've mentioned, but the WI, the Dull Men's Club, those, but they're all important areas, because I don't think we do enough on this, because I don't think we have a way of trying to stress to people that what sounds like a dull and boring subject is actually quite important, and that's, I know I've done a lot on my own ward to try and raise awareness on that please do take part in this consultation, because it may or may not affect whether or not that field over there remains a field. So is there any other comments on what I've said? So in terms of getting improvements to this plan then, Alan, who's going to do it, and then can the suggested improvements be circulated back through the committee, please?
Yeah, I think that Craig and I will work through
right.
your 3 bullet
And is it possible that we can extend the time to 12 weeks?
12 weeks does bite into we've got a hard deadline on the 31st of December for the analysis. 12 weeks does bite into that and analysing those responses and getting back from Reg 18.
Okay. Sorry,
So there is another stage of consultation at the back end of this, and that's when the final plan goes forward. And
the Reg 19 stage.
The Reg 19 stage.
Yeah.
So again, I would steer members away from increasing this consultation. This is still, there are lots of questions and issues still to solve on a large number of the sites going forward. So it's so important we hit that 31st of October deadline. Otherwise, we'd have to start the whole thing again. And I don't want to go through another Reg 18, and I'm sure members don't either.
Yeah,
Let's just get a plan
3 or 4
adopted.
already. Right. Sorry, one last quick point.
I would just really appreciate if you could keep in touch, because I'd really, it's an area that I feel really strongly about. I'm very happy to provide any support. The one question then is also that we had a meeting as a Labour group and put in some information previously. It's not quite clear what happened to it and whether it, it becomes a bit opaque. So it'd be really helpful to know who any response should go into. I think last time it just had to go into the consultant. Who the information should go into, and just how do we get the feedback so that we can sort of track what's happened to our comments.
If it's a formal response to the consultation, that goes to planning policy consultation at West Northants, and the next stage of plan making will provide a consultation summary setting out the main issues raised, how we've addressed them. We've done that this time. You'll see that in the papers that are published on Thursday with the local plan consultation. It sets out what was said to us April to June 24. We've also published all the responses from that consultation. They're all on the internet, so you can go on there and search by your name, and you'll find your response if you made it as part of that formal consultation.
Okay. It might just encourage councillors to do something if we thought our stuff was going to be grouped somewhere, or if it was going to...
Well, they're always, certainly in the past,
otherwise it was just
they often present you with a 1,000-page tome that has my ramblings and everybody else's ramblings in there for all to see. So they do generally do it. Okay, so I think you've got the message that it's a reasonable start, but it needs to be improved.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks so much for all your comments.
Thank you.
It's really helpful to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we move on to draft budget report for the Scrutiny Task and Finish panel. So the Task and Finish panel met, when was it? 14th of Jan. I think we had the 3 areas that we talked about: adult social care, children's trust, and the other areas. So thanks to Jonathan, Cam, and Dan. I think you did the other one. We place on record. So Dan, do you want to just start and go through any relevant points? I know we have them all summarised, and also thank you to Marina and I suppose Wendy, whoever, for spinning them around so quickly. So thank you for that. I don't think people appreciate how long it can take to spin these round, and particularly spin them around at speed. So,
through you, Chair, if I could just jump in on a point of information. You've kind of got a situation here where it's all the right notes, just not quite in the right order. The intention is that the report starting page 19 should be and running to page 28 should be the front of the report, with the notes of the breakout groups on the back of that.
So what recommendations are you making, if any, to Cabinet around the budget? So on adult social care, we got the usual overview as to where they are, but what confidence do we have that they're going to hit it this year? Yeah, crack on.
Yeah, so somewhat is probably the best thing in terms of confidence, but the key output or the key recommendation is there is quite a big body of work called a sustainability plan, and there's about 58 points within that. whether they are looking at specific items, areas, project specifics to try and tackle some of these challenges. So the key recommendation is that we need to get under the skin of that better, in effect, because we had a very, very top-level overview. I think we got to appreciate quite clearly some of the challenges in terms of things like the freeze in the amount of money, 23,250, before you actually have to, as your cut-off point for contributions, and the fact that that's been stuck like that for 15 years, whilst at the same time weekly care costs have gone from about £400 to £1,000 a week. So there's a clear big bubble, which we all know about on a national scale, that's caused that problem. But the key recommendation really was that we should try and create a working group. It's probably not a task and finish group, because it's more about looking at those areas in detail, and probably needs representation from the Adult Scrutiny Committee and this committee, and a blended group, to really get under the skin of those key items. That's probably the key thing that came through.
Okay. And are things with 58 work streams really ever going to be successful? Always strikes me that when you say we've got 58 priorities, you begin to think, really?
So some of them were described as bigger bangs for your buck than others, so I think that's probably what that group would need to do, is to work through priorities almost.
We want to sort the rockets from the Catherine wheels. Right, NCT, my overall impression was that we were rather pulling our punches, or rather muted about what we had to say there. Cam?
I don't think we got to that kind of point. But it was a very strange presentation. So the very idea why we were there, it was to look through the budget and all the kind of details around it, but the presentation was mostly about the performance, and it didn't really answer any of the questions, and we didn't go to the end of the slide pack anyway, so we didn't get any information.
Yeah, but that's usually their way.
Yeah, but
look at the performance, hang the cost. Because they know that the cost doesn't matter. There's always somebody picking up their bills.
if they've done that before, then that was just kind of...
I think...
So again, do we have any confidence that they're not going to be 10 million overspent when we sit here next year?
No, well, not from what we've heard, because one of the comments, which I thought was very interesting, that was made by CEO, saying that what is the money when it comes to children? And I thought, well, that's an interesting point. So I have no confidence, and I hope, you know, yes, please, yeah.
Yeah, come up to the table.
Yes, I agree with you, Cam. It was an unexpectedly unusual meeting. How do I say that politely? So really what came through was, as Cam has said, a lot of information on how well the Children's Trust is doing. We had nothing really that gave us any kind of overview or confidence about the budget and kind of the future direction of travel. It is a complex topic, though, and I think we need to recognise that, both in terms of the statutory requirements from the government in respect of the Children's Trust and the limitation of what the council can do. So I thought really what we came out with at the end of that meeting, Cam, was basically we need to do some further work over a period of time to really get to grips with the budget and the requirements of delivery and how best to find a way forward that doesn't end up with the ongoing pattern of overspend that we have seen over a period of about 5 years.
No, since its inception, yeah.
Yeah.
But you see, I don't accept this thing around, oh, look at the performance, because when you're getting 25p in every pound spent, your budget has doubled in 5 years and another 100 million on top.
Yeah.
If you're not seeing an increase in performance, then there's something really badly wrong. So the increase in performance should be there, because without doubt the money has gone in. My concern is it's unsustainable, and we're not going to be able to keep sustaining these 10 million a year overspends that we're constantly being asked to do.
So I think
and then
really
double the budget the following, or adjust the budget the following year, and we're another 10 million over.
I think really, Cam, we were in that group. I think really the group's view was that there needed to be further detailed scrutiny work to take place to understand the complexities of the situation.
By us, with children.
By us.
By us here in this committee.
By us or a subgroup to actually take that work forward, because that meeting that we had really didn't get us anywhere at all.
Okay, thank you. Sally, and then John.
Thank you. I mean, there are two really difficult areas. The one which is probably the most difficult is the Children's Trust, because of course we don't have control over the budget and we don't have control over the management of the commissioning of the services, decisions about what children should get what services. So that makes that very difficult. I have to say some of the other service areas are particularly problematic. We also know, like SEND and adult care, but let's not put those to side. In terms of the Children's Trust, it's obvious it needs an ongoing, it needs a extended strategy to deal with it, because we have the inspection coming up in the spring. We then have sort of about the end of the year before any decisions taken. We then have by government as to whether we can bring it back in-house. And we then have about, I think it's about another year, isn't it, until we can bring it back in-house. So we have about 2 budget cycles. I think we do. We have 1 or 2 budget cycles.
Sorry, bringing it back in-house is a separate thing.
We have
I think government have to take it out of intervention.
Please let me finish. Because it's only once we can bring it back once there's agreement by the government that it's got to standard, that we can start to make decisions about the placements and the budgets. And as I understand it at the moment, there's some sensitivities about relationships in how all of this happens. So I know that some of the councillors and officers scrutinise this area extremely carefully and constantly, to try to bear down as much as is practicable and possible on the costs, and to find a way forward. And I think that if the council is going to look at how to deal with this particular issue, then we need to look really carefully about the decisions about what makes it possible to bring the services for the council to take decisions about the services, be those financial or service, to make sure that we retain the confidence of all the stakeholders so that that process doesn't get derailed. I mean, I also think that we need, meanwhile, to look at some of the other interventions like the family hubs and the placement of that, to see if there's any way that we can mitigate the number of children who are coming into care or coming up as really problematic, and see if we can divert them earlier. But I do think that and this might sound odd coming from me, but I do actually think that some of the officers and members who are dealing with it currently are probably taking some of the most constructive approaches towards enabling the council to deal with what is an incredibly difficult and sensitive service area.
John?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Not completely springing to their defence, but we do have a financial update with Colin Foster and Andrew Tagg every month. That's Martin Henry, myself, James Smith, and we go through the detail. It might be best that if we dig into this any further, it might be best in a private session if you wish to go into that any further. But we do have those monthly meetings where we do really get into the detail, possibly more than you're able to. and which might have generated some hesitancy during that meeting. Unfortunately, I was in another meeting, but anyway, for what it's worth, Chair.
So I think what you're saying is the recommendation then that we identify areas for further in-depth scrutiny, and possibly, as you say, it's covered. So are we happy then with that as the recommendation that I'll be making on the committee's behalf to Cabinet in whatever it is, 15th of Feb? And then the other areas, so the impact of high needs blocks, fees and charges, HR proposals, vacancy staff delivery. Dan?
Yeah, they were all, as you've just said, there was not a lot on the DSG that could be done. We acknowledged what the service was already doing around that, about putting the various interventions in place. There were some things about home to school transport that we spoke about. But we had 3 or 4 different areas that we had to cover in half an hour, so we did quite wide. But I think the general feedback wider, and I think probably that echoes across most of the groups, was that we needed probably more time and something more. The session didn't quite work, and so we ended up with children's that were a bit in a different place, and adults were in somewhere else, and we were trying to cram everything else into 20 minutes, which we need much wider, I think, in advanced budget meetings, or something that we do throughout the year maybe, to just try and get under the skin of all of this, because trying to get people up to speed of various different councillors, of various different skills, of varying different knowledge. I could see why children's did what they did to try and get people to understand, but it wasn't really what we were there to, what you guys, from the feedback I had, what they were trying to achieve. So I think there was varying success, but I think we need to think harder next year about how we do this, and maybe do something ongoing throughout the year so we're not hitting it cold again next year.
Okay. Are there any recommendations on the pressure on the DSG, which is also putting a lot of pressure on our investable income and our returns then from money invested?
In the 10 minutes we had, there wasn't any. No.
To speak to government, to register this point with government, because whatever solution they're going to come up with in 2-3 years' time, it's costing us right now. I saw the figure in there somewhere, a few £1 million on lost interest. It wasn't, might have been in the earlier report. It was in there somewhere as to how much money we were expecting to lose on lost investment income. And I've seen the figure from up to 15 million. And I've seen the figure from County Council Network, and that was in the hundreds of millions. So it's a big number, and government need to do something about that through either, because basically they're running an overdraft at our behalf, at our expense here, and we're paying for central government while they're dilly-dallying around. So I think we need to make that point, and possibly through LGA and things like that as well.
I mean, we talked about the 2029 date when they're going to take this on, but the uncertainty in terms of what's going to happen with that debt that's left effectively, and we're certainly, I think we acknowledge we weren't the worst case scenario, certainly in terms of what some of the other councils are sitting on hundreds and we're sitting on tens. So,
yes. Everybody's in trouble with this one. It's just the depth that varies.
Yes.
And but without doubt we're at the lower end of the seriousness. Like places like Bristol were, I think, they're 150 million a couple of years ago, and those numbers are projected almost double and double again. So I think we're projecting about 100 and something million by the time we get to 29. Like
I think we're projecting 150 million.
Yeah, it's not
in terms of, so it's about 50 million, 52 million. At the moment.
I think we're more or less doubling every year. We go from 10 to 20, 20 to 50 this year, and I think it's a serious problem that we have to. Well, everybody needs to appreciate, and government saying, we'll look at that in 2029. That's one thing, but I'm a bit worried what they're going to do between now and then. There'll be a hell of a lot of money built up, and how are we going to solve that? On the fees and charges, I don't want to get into the politics of this, but did we get any assurance that we believe the numbers and that the other impacts on parking and whatever in the market towns?
No, there was a recommendation around the economic impact for all of those, the economic impact assessment, which I don't believe has been done yet. So yeah, that was that. And then sort of the other fees and charges were making sure the environmental fines were maxed out as much as they could be. See if that's a deterrent or not. And then some people impact around the work for...
Well, I saw a press release that said we bought a watchtower or something for fly tipping.
Yes, yeah. An AI camera, yes, for Northampton, I think.
An AI. I don't know where it's going, but you know, John.
I just wanted to come back and congratulate Councillor Lister on covering a heck of a lot of ground during that meeting, trying his best to dig into the detail, but there's just... He had three topics, so perhaps we need to look at that.
Well, are we prepared at some point? You know, this is really a matter for us for next year, if you want. Are you willing to do a 4 or 5 hour session, starting at 4 and finishing at 9, 10 o'clock at night, if that's what you want, or a couple of nights running, or an all-day Saturday, or an all-day Sunday, or something, and just give it,
I'd do it an all day during the week, let's just do it.
Well, yeah, not everybody can do that, but yeah, I'm just wondering, is that something that we'd be happy to do, like a Saturday, and just say, right, 10 till 4 and sandwiches at some time in the middle of the day? Maybe, well, if we're going to, we need to think about that for probably September time, that we can actually plan that in.
Yeah, I think through you, Chair, these are questions that the committee can decide it wants to think about now. It doesn't need to answer now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, can we put that on the work programme, that we have a discussion at some point about the format of budget scrutiny, and then pick up these ideas? Because we've stuck with this format for a few years, and maybe what we're saying is it's run its course. We need to think of a different format.
45 minutes is not enough.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's not enough. But I even suspect you spent 3 days on it, would still be saying it wasn't enough. But because there's too much of it. Yeah, crack on.
And also, there were certain requirements, if I put that way, or expectation in terms of what we're going to get out of the presentation. And I think maybe that wasn't communicated to the people they were presenting. And as such, when talking about the Children Trust, that was completely not what we were expecting. So we sat there expecting them to talk about budget, and they talked about anything else but budget. So it was...
Situation normal.
Sorry, through you, Chair, I think they were seeking to show how changes in performance, how service development by the Children's Trust and WNC would have a financial impact. I just don't think, well, don't think they didn't get to the end of it in time to crystallise that.
Okay, right. So, in terms of this report, then, inadequate or deficient or whatever word we want to use as it is, are we happy then that that'll be the report from this committee to Cabinet? And are there any particular points other than time, the in-depth analysis, or the depth at which you can go and the time available, that you want me to raise with Cabinet, because I'll be presenting this on your behalf? No, right.
Only just to say, I think, the recommendation from the adult group, there's almost, I think, a similar mirror potentially for children's.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And it's almost like an ongoing watching brief or engagement brief across those particular scrutiny groups. I think that's...
Well, the triangulation committee will be meeting early March, so we can pick that up then. Yeah, crack on.
And I think the committee's agreed that it wants to have a look at how it does budget scrutiny in process. I think part of that is not just the element of budget scrutiny that's done between the publication of the draft budget and the presentation of the final draft budget to Cabinet, but how that element links in with the work that your finance scrutiny does through the year as a whole. I think that the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny may well give guidance that if you're concentrating all of your budget scrutiny on the draft budget once it's published, then you're missing out an important element. So it's about thinking about the committee's work through the year as a whole, as well as this element of it.
Agreed. So we'll move on then to budget monitoring 25, 26 and budget setting 26-27 update. I think that's a verbal update. We don't have James and we don't have Martin, but we do have Stuart. But I do appreciate that you're not the finance lead for the council. So if you want to tell us what you want to tell us, or you want to say, we can skip that. Or John wants to give us an update as to where they are. But I do appreciate it's not your area of expertise. Crack on, Stuart. But
well, I think it would be better, Chair, if we circulate something tomorrow morning first thing.
Yeah.
I did get a very quick verbal update, but if I'm honest, I don't think it's really got the depth that I would be able to answer your question.
I appreciate that. John, is there anything?
Yeah. I would agree that, Chair. I've got... I went into it in quite some depth in Cabinet, and we've not had that much of an update apart from figures, so it's probably...
Do you know when we're expecting the final settlement? It is out.
They've given there's some updates which have been circulated, and I'm sure you can circulate tomorrow morning.
Okay. Right. It usually comes out around the end of January, so we're practically there. So
there's an update just on the verbal side of it about to the positive of about 6.5 million.
Yeah.
But there's DSG wanting to look at a little bit. That 1.5 million saving is that just needs looking at again. So if we can come back, Chair, tomorrow.
That's fine. No, I appreciate that. We don't want to wing it, or worse still, mislead, even if it's inadvertent. Right, so item 9, section 106 agreements. James, you were to provide an update on the, I take it that's you, the Assistant Services Democratic Manager, whatever?
Yes.
Right, okay. Why just put James?
We like to be formal. And it also helps to distinguish between the different Jameses that report to this committee.
Oh, no, but that gives us options.
Well, I'm the only one present in any case, so yes, it's me. So yes, the scope for this piece of work was obviously presented to the last committee meeting and agreed. We subsequently, as is standard, wrote out to all non-executive councillors to invite involvement, and we've had more names back than it's proposed to include in the task and finish panel. So it would be very helpful for the committee to decide between those today, reflecting that it said it wanted around 7 members and a balance of urban and rural and different parts of the district. So I'm happy to go through the names for the benefit of committee members. So you have yourself, Councillor Adrian Little, Councillor John East, Councillor Joanne Blythe, Councillor Ron Furman, Councillor Alison Eastwood, Councillor Phil Bignell, Councillor Daniel Lister, and Councillor Rosie Humphreys. So they're the ones who replied to the invitation expressing an interest. So you have a mixture of Northampton, former Northampton, former South Northamptonshire and former Daventry district there. You have a mixture of parties, albeit not including a representative of the Labour group. And you have yourself and Councillor Lister as members of this committee, and the other potentials are not.
Okay.
So it would be very helpful for the committee to identify 7 from
Do we need
members.
7, or are you happy just to have that and then there'll be almost natural substitutes within each of the groups?
Chair, can I apologise? I mean, I don't know why you didn't get a response, but I know Councillor Purser was particularly interested in that one.
Yeah, okay.
That would put it up to 10, Chair, which is
rather
a large task.
It is a large group, but nonetheless, they'll not all turn up at once on the one night. So I'm quite happy within those for someone to be that and someone to say they're going to be the sub. Will that work? And just leave it to the groups? She? You mean Frizana?
She was... I'm not going to
You should stop before you get in even more trouble. I was just saying that that within this, if yes, we got 10 volunteers, which is always better than anything, but I know there'll not be, everybody won't turn up on no matter. So if we leave the 10 and within that the groups just sort out who their subs would be, except for me and the Labour group, and that's fine. Well, yeah, but you can't, I'm just thinking if we have it, it's useful because once they get into it, I don't mind even if 10 turn up, because we're not making decisions, but also if you do it, you not have to bring somebody up to speed if somebody can't take it. So are we happy with that?
Sorry to sound rather bureaucratic, Chair. I think you're either saying that there will be a group of 10 members, or you're saying that there will be a group of fewer members and some of the 10 may be substitutes. I think it just seems slightly odd to say, well, we're going to have a group of 10, but some of those members will be substitutes. In which case,
sorry. Okay. Well, if we have a group of 7, then I don't mind either way. Yeah, we know that. We just know there'll be natural attrition and pressure on people's diaries. I'll be surprised if 10 ever turn up.
I was just going to say, Chair, I think we've identified this over a number of weeks. So if we send back to those 10 which dates there are, again, I think we will see,
you'll see the
1 or 2 may well drop out at that stage.
You'll see what floats to the top.
But I agree. I think if it had been 14, 16, 18, I would be more worried. But 10, I think, is still a manageable number.
Yeah, we have it with the waste one at the moment. I can't remember the full, but you never get everybody there. It's just impossible. So I'm happy with that. Anything through review of the work programme?
Chair, there's one point on that. We've got scrutiny of DOGE activity to run alongside the budget process, and there's no timescale being put. Well, we're nearly through the budget process, so perhaps...
Scrutiny of what was that, Sally?
Doge.
Proposed.
Doge.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's just Jonathan's little hobby horse that it doesn't get dropped.
I think it was Daniel as well who wanted to make the point that the officers and the existing process actually work fairly well without DOGE. Thank you very much.
Well, there's nothing to
if we're just making
but
that point,
I don't believe there's been any DOGE activity.
Okay.
Is the
so can we
point.
formally discharge it on the basis that DOGE hasn't done anything?
Well, I think Jonathan wanted to keep it there for the opposite reason, but John, do you want to defend the DOGE principle?
Well, if we give it its full title, it's government, isn't it? We're not in government yet. And
that's a good excuse.
For the benefit of Jonathan.
Well, it's as good as 14 years, Sally. Come on. Right, oh, sorry, you're going to...
No, sorry, Chair. Saying at the moment it will come out of the work programme because there's nothing to scrutinise doesn't preclude you from putting it back in later if there is something.
So are we happy? Are you happy, Jonathan?
No.
Made the point.
Not entirely happy. No, because
less pissed off. Sorry, am I allowed to say that?
No. The point of putting it in there was that if there was any DOGE activity, whether that was ahead of budget, after budget, it still should formally be clocked and reviewed through this committee in terms of impact. So, the reality is there is none. We haven't seen any activity. There's been nothing external. That doesn't mean to say there won't be. I don't know what the plans are. So, for me, I would like it to stay there as a rider still on that basis.
Chair, could we then note, because this budget cycle is nearly over, can we make sure that we do actually note whether if DOGE doesn't make any input to this budget cycle? Because otherwise we've just got something sitting there that we don't do anything with.
I think it's a simple statement of fact that there's not been any sort of DOGE input directly in terms of people turning up with their laptops and going through data, but there might have been some indirectly in the background of areas to look at. I don't know. John?
Yes, I think it's been looked at the level of scrutiny which West Northants undergoes itself. I think we're less of a priority for the reform group as such, because we're doing a damn good job here. That doesn't mean to say that we wouldn't revisit it in the future, but at the moment we're not a priority for any specialist group to come in. I think the actual work that goes on, just because it's called DOGE, that is government, and we're not in government yet. So, it's a potential something coming up. I don't think anyone's guaranteed that we would get it in by the budget. If someone's guaranteed that, then
To be fair, John, it wasn't sold as government, it was sold as local government. So, you know, let's be clear about that. But from my point of view, can we leave it?
We'll leave it on the work programme as something that we can have this pointless discussion on a regular basis. Right, anything else on the work programme that people do want to get on there? So if we put something on for later in the year, please, around what we just said, having a review of where we're at with budget, possibly September, whatever time that'll be. Yeah, September time I think feels about right, that we can begin to look forward whenever the budget the budget setting will probably have kicked off just around then. And the 106 still, we're still thinking of bringing that. So when are we hoping that task and finish group might be thinking about making some sort of report? Will it be this municipal year, or are we actually thinking it'll be more into the back end of this year, middle to end of this year, autumn time?
The suggestion at the last meeting was presentation to the committee in June.
Okay, right.
Which I guess could be June or July, subject to whatever the proposed date for this committee's meeting.
Well, that gives us an idea then, so we're working for which is always the case. It was always going to be after the budget, so February through May, June time's fine.
Yeah. Just to highlight as well, Chair, that the Adult Social Care, Health and Communities Scrutiny Committee meeting on the 20th of January supported the budget scrutiny review recommendation about the joint group to set up for oversight of the adult social care sustainability plan. I think there was some discussion at that meeting about how that might be constituted, a suggestion of 3 members plus a substitute from each of that committee and this committee. So there's still some detailed work, some more work to be done to work out the scope in terms of reference for that group, but yeah, the recommendation came out of budget scrutiny. The other committee that might be involved is happy to proceed in that direction.
Okay, great.
So my only comment is, should that feature on the work plan at all, or does it just sit with that one committee?
Well, if it's a joint group, then it should appear in both work programmes.
Yeah.
So it's not in there at the minute, and it ought to be then.
Well, if we put it in then as a, cross-cutting one, we're quite happy to do that, and probably also maybe the children's one on NCT.
And are there any members from this committee who might be particularly interested in being involved in that work, or given that not all of the members are present at this meeting?
Yeah.
Adults, I would be happy to. But obviously we have a representative on the actual committee as well, so, but yeah, if you need it.
Well, if and when it gets sort of established whether we're going to do it formally or informally, then we can, again, just like that 106 one, just get the membership and report through to both. So, I think that's, have you anything, James, that we need to get on the work programme?
No, I think
fine.
Okay, Chair.
Sorry, can I just ask one question? If these different working groups are taking place, will they get all the information? Because there is that issue about the increase in the adult care charges, residential care charges, that doesn't seem to have gone to any committee at all and hasn't been scrutinised at all. And obviously Councillor Purse is the chair of the relevant scrutiny committee and they know nothing about it, and it's happened. So I just it's just a plea that those groups and working groups and so on do actually get all the information.
Yeah, good point.
I think there'd be an onus. I'd always advocate working out what you want to do and then thinking about the best way of doing it, rather than having a working group that might be doing something to do with adult social care and therefore thinking that should encompass everything. So if there is...
Just to comment on that, my understanding on that particular point is it affected 10 people who were on legacy rates. That's what I've been led to believe, but...
Well, yeah, but they raised £250,000 a year.
I'm only telling you what I've been told. So.
Right. Well, we'll have to take that offline or find out from Director of Adult Care. Can you maybe give us a written answer on that one?
So could Councillor Keeble just go through the matter again, just so I've got it clear?
I mean, it's just that, there's two issues. One's about the decision, but also about the provision of information to members about how the decision was made. And it's that latter one that I'm concerned about, because if there's a working group that's looking at a particular area, then we just need to make sure that they do get all the relevant information. And this one was about the decision about the increase in charges for self-funders in residential care homes who got very substantial increases in their charges, implemented it was about 7 weeks from issue first being raised to the charges being imposed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. So there has been no urgent business notified, so I will close the meeting at 19:55. Thank you all for your time.